Why did I agree to watch you? You're just like your father. Dirty and gross. I can never understand why my stupid sister would marry a black man, and it brings the family shame for her to have a kid as dark as you. Listen, just do the chores that I tell you to do, and we won't have any problems. Do you understand? I nodded my head, but I really didn't understand what he was saying. I did, however, understand by his tone, though, that if I disobeyed him, that I would be punished for doing so. Over the next few weeks, he showed me the various chores that he expected me to do, and while I was very young, I tried my best to do them just as he had shown me. My name is Mateo, and I had a very unusual childhood. Sadly, I never actually met my mother as she passed away during childbirth. More than a few people told me that I look a lot like her, and I take it as a compliment, as she was a very beautiful woman. My father took her death especially hard and worried that he wouldn't be able to afford to raise me, as my mother had been the breadwinner and didn't have any life insurance. When I was 8, he did manage to find a job overseas working on an oil rig. It was dangerous work, but it paid really well. Since he was gone for most of the year, he had arranged for me to live with my Uncle Rob. Rob was my mother's younger brother, and from what I found out later in life, it had taken a lot of convincing for him to agree to take care of me. He was divorced and lived in a small house and was rather mean. The day after my father left, my uncle took a good look at me, and I instantly knew that I was in trouble. Why did I agree to watch you? You're just like your father. Dirty and gross. I can never understand why my stupid sister would marry a black man, and it brings the family shame for her to have a kid as dark as you. Listen, just do the chores that I tell you to do, and we won't have any problems. Do you understand? I nodded my head, but I really didn't understand what he was saying. I did, however, understand by his tone, though, that if I disobeyed him, that I would be punished for doing so. Over the next few weeks, he showed me the various chores that he expected me to do, and while I was very young, I tried my best to do them just as he had shown me, but I still failed quite often. Each time I did, he would use his belt and hit me with it. Eventually, I learned to do things like the laundry and dishes well enough that I was no longer punished, but I knew that any slip-up at all, and I would face the belt again. Aside from that, I also had to be on the lookout for when my uncle would drink, as he would get violent. It didn't matter whether I did my chores or not. He would just take one look at me and bring out the belt. The only times that I had any sort of relief was when my father and my aunt would visit. While they were divorced, my aunt would visit Rob to check in on me. I didn't understand why she felt it was her duty to check on me, but it was nice that while she was there, that I could feel safe if only for a few hours. The only other times that I felt safe were the rare times that my father would come for a visit. My uncle would put on a good show and make it look good. He would threaten me and promise that if I said anything bad about him, that he would make things even worse for me. He knew that my father had no other choice but to leave me with him, which he was quick to remind me of after my father left usually. Just remember that without me, that you'll be out on the street. People like you can't get real jobs and have to resort to working outside the country like your dad is doing. Honestly, the country would be way better off if all you dark-skinned people were kicked out of the country. So, yeah, without me, that might very well happen to you. As I grew older, I found out that my father sent large amounts of money to my uncle in exchange for watching over me, although I knew that most of that money went towards buying liquor and prostitutes. My uncle had many vices, but my father didn't know about them. Then one day shortly after I turned 16, we received word that my father had been injured on the job, and within a couple days he had passed away. With no more money being sent from my father to my uncle, he decided to kick me out. He didn't care that I wasn't an adult. His only concern was that with no more money coming in, that I was just a hindrance to him, that I would eat up his already limited funds. With nowhere to go, I contacted his ex-wife Lucinda and begged her to let me stay with her until I could find a way to get a place of my own. I knew that it was a long shot, but I really had other options. Surprisingly, Lucinda took me in, and while I expected her to only let me stay a few nights, she instead promised me that I could stay for as long as I wanted. But you don't even know me, and we aren't family, so why are you helping me?
There were many reasons why I divorced your uncle, but one of them was the fact that I couldn't have children, and well, Rob wasn't the kind of person to adopt. It might sound odd, but you were always the child that I always wanted to have, but never did.
I was hesitant to trust her as my time with my uncle had left me feeling jaded and reluctant to trust anyone really. But the more time that we spent together, the more I began to realize that she was on the level. She was just desperate for family and connection, and if I was being honest, so was I. Moving in with her was one of the best decisions that I had ever made. When I had lived with my uncle, he barely fed me more than the minimum that was required to keep me alive. And as such, I was extremely thin and underweight. But after I moved in with Lucinda, she made sure that I never went hungry ever again. She fed me so well that I went from being underweight to a bit overweight, if I'm being honest. On top of that, she even helped me to find a scholarship that would pay for college once I came of age. It was rather nice, actually, to be able to go to college, especially since I had never even dreamed that it would be possible. The day that I graduated was one of the happiest days of my life, and my aunt cried tears of joy.
Oh, Mateo, your father and mother would be so proud of you. You've done so well for yourself.
Thank you, Aunt Lucinda. I couldn't have done this without you. I had taken material engineering and had graduated at the top of my class, which guaranteed me a job at a wonderful company. The pay was more than I could have expected, and soon after, I bought myself a house and started to really enjoy my new life. Things were going really well for me, until one day I was paid a visit by my uncle. Foolishly, I let him into my house and then let him tell me all about his woes. As it turned out, he was on the verge of bankruptcy as his drinking habit had only gotten worse, and he had recently had a liver transplant. He had no insurance to cover the cost of the transplant and had to take out a massive loan to pay for it. Without a solid income, though, he was quickly falling behind on his payments and hadn't reduced his drinking at all. To be honest, he didn't really look that healthy when he came to visit me.
Hey, listen, I know it's been a while, but you owe me for taking care of you all those years ago. I heard that you managed to convince that idiot Lucinda to give you money, and that you've got yourself a good-paying job.
Wait a minute. Do you honestly expect me to give you money for all the nonsense that you put me through? You used to beat me just because you had a few drinks in your system.
Oh, grow up. That's all in the past. Besides, unlike Lucinda, I actually am family.
Yes, you are related to me by blood, but that doesn't actually make us family. Unlike you, Lucinda has proven that she is worthy of the title of being called family. She is everything that you can never be. Kind, loving, patient, and someone that I can count on. You made it abundantly clear what you thought of me and my father. You hated us because of our skin color. Are you drunk now? Because you must be if you think that I'll give you a single penny.
If you don't help me, I'll end up losing my house to pay back the loan, and on top of that, I may have to get the surgery again.
That really isn't my problem. The only person to blame for your liver being destroyed is you. You've ruined your own body, and now you have to deal with the consequences of your choices. I could see his face getting redder and redder as we talked, and he quickly reached for his belt. I couldn't believe that he thought that I would let him abuse me with it like he used to when I was a child, especially since he was now quite frail, and I had grown up to be a lot stronger than him. Before he could get his belt fully off, I grabbed him by the collar of his shirt and lifted him a few inches into the air, before then throwing him to the ground. Standing there above him, he looked so weak and fragile, and a part of me wanted to have pity on him. But then I remembered all the pain and torment that he had delivered onto me, and I just shouted at him to get out of my home and to never speak to me again. 2 months later, a police officer came to my door and informed me that they had found my uncle dead. Apparently, he had lost his house shortly after we had spoken, and he had been forced to live on the street. With what little money he had left, he had bought a lot of alcohol and had drunk himself unconscious every night, which caused his liver disease to return, which led to his death. It was then that I did feel sympathy for him. He was a horrible person, but he was family, and so I did pay for him to have a proper funeral. Aside from myself and Aunt Lucinda, the only other person that attended it, though, was a priest, and he was paid to be there. My uncle had no friends, and I was the last of his family members alive. Thinking back, I tried my best to learn some valuable life lessons from both my father and uncle. From my father, I learned that no matter how good a job is, that no job is worth sacrificing time with those that you love. Time with family is far more important. And from my uncle, I learned the lesson to love my fellow man. that having your heart filled with hatred is a cancer that steals happiness and leaves you bitter and alone. Hard lessons learned, but good ones to have. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.